Well, welcome back to those of you who have been following the series, and if there's anyone new, welcome as well. When people walk into a forest, and I don't know why we do this, but I know I do, and I'm assuming other people do it as well, we have a tendency to look that way, a horizontal view of the forest. I always kind of think, we have a tendency to read and write horizontally, and I don't know if we have a visual as well with that. But today I want to talk about the vertical structure of the forest. A lot of people, yeah, we know the trees are up there, but you're still looking this way. And I'm saying that because forest biodiversity depends critically on the vertical structure of the forest. That is, from the canopy of the most dominant trees to smaller trees, to shrubs, down to the vascular plants, and even the grasses and the mosses that are right on the ground. In this, various habitats are created by those different levels. And those different levels moderate the temperature. And in one sense, there's an aesthetic appeal from the canopy to down below where we kind of walk around. But when you think of it this way, both the horizontal and the vertical and the depth, a forest becomes three-dimensional, not two-dimensional, like a picture or something. There's all of that to take in. The vertical structure of the forest, though, especially the canopy, directly affects the forest environment. When you think of those, like on the island here, we have those big white pines with those big bushy type canopies. The impact that they create on the amount of sunlight, the availability coming in from the top of those trees down to the ground, it plays a role in shaping the canopy structure, as well as the growth and survival of the plants within the forest from the top down to the bottom. They do so because light levels vary, obviously, and depending on the size and the frequency of gaps that are in the canopy, and as well as the shade from non-canopy vegetation. If you're down at the bottom, you're moss or something like that, and you have a little shrub next to you, that may block sun, then that's all you're going to get. But that one is being blocked maybe by another one, but being blocked by another one, and all of a sudden there's a hole up in the canopy. That's where the sun comes in. Maybe only for a couple hours a day, but it makes a difference. This in turn impacts the distribution of the plant communities themselves. Species that are adapted to low light condition don't respond very well in areas that have little canopy shading. They want that shade. That's what they've evolved to. And all of a sudden a tree falls down, the sky opens up, and boom. And they're going, nah, it's not what I want. Species that are adapted to very high light condition, which are the canopy trees themselves. They grow quickly in areas with less canopy cover. They need the sun, they shoot up. And ultimately they shade whatever surrounding vegetation until everything reaches maturity. And that's the struggle. You're this big at 1 year old, and that tree is 300. It has an advantage right now. When it falls, the little guy has the advantage. That's what happens. So canopy closure impacts the type and the amount of understory vegetation with noticeable thinning occurring as light availability on the forest floor becomes more limited. So the darker it gets down below, the harder the struggle. And only those that can adapt to that survive that until there's a change. Now, the forest age, which is usually determined from the last disturbance of fire, or hurricane, or whatever, or even lumbering. And then the environmental variables that come into play. They determine, in a sense, who's going to make it to the canopy and who isn't. And that's the layering that you see from the smallest to the next, to the next, to the next. In that, time passes, and a canopy layer and the structure of the forest change. But if things are stable for X amount of time, a forest has a good chance of reaching what they call old growth structure. We have that on the island. The oldest trees, at least 250, maybe 300, maybe more. They'll be marked by gaps where a tree comes down for whatever reason. And the whole vertical structure is working all the time to allow vegetation to flourish at all of those different levels along the vertical column, from the top to the bottom, from the bottom to the top. Now again, science comes in here and says, wait a minute, we have to assess this structure. And so they've looked at height classes, which is very good. It sounds mathematical, which it is. But at the same time, it's looking at what takes place at the ground level to, say, 0.5 meter. You know, maybe that much. What's happening in that structure? Right there in the ground and up to 0.5 meter. Then from 1 meter, or a yard, to 2, social distancing. Then you go 2 to 4 meters, 6 to 16. Once you get into that level, you're looking at, 6 meters is, way up there, almost 20 feet. 16, we're getting up there. And then there's over 16, which is most of our old growth trees. But within these heights, as well as within the length and width of that whole ground level sample plot, all plants are described. That's when this is what we're going to be doing this coming summer. We're going to be putting down these sample plots, and who's in it? If you think of a city, you'll have 1-story buildings. You'll have a 5-story building. You'll have skyscrapers, and then you get these big, big things that they're building. Forest is no different. Within this structure, though, photosynthesis is greatly affected, because that's the only way plants survive. Most plants need 25 to 30% full sunlight every day to activate photosynthesis. If you're not getting it, now, maybe there's a cloudy day, okay, but on a regular basis, that's what they need to survive. However, and we're looking at the island, in a conifer forest, only about 10 to 15% of full sunlight will ever reach that understory. I've been into some conifer forests, especially up north, where they're so thick. Literally, it doesn't matter whether it's sunny or not. You can't see it. And on the ground, there's needles. That's it. Nothing is growing. Maybe a mushroom here or there on a rotting log, but nothing is growing. It is dark. However, in a deciduous forest, nice maples and oaks and what have you, that's reduced to 5% because you have all of those leaves with no break. And under that, You see this in parks. You get grass, you know, and somebody goes out there and mows it and waters it, and it looks nice. So trees like birch and cherry, they're quick growers. They come in, they grow quick, and they die quick. A white pine can sit there. We've been out in the winter, this winter, looking at trees surviving under the snow and measuring them of how many years they've been around. Now, you know, they're sitting under that much snow, crushed down sometimes. They'll be back up. And a tree that's that big, that's it. And you go, oh, you know, 7, 9 years old. That is slow growth. But they grow up in shaded conditions. They can tolerate that. And trees like hemlock, red maple, spruce, they survive in these low-lit conditions, slow to grow, but then they have long life. So it reminds me of the tortoise and the hare, in the sense that the tortoise gets there slow and steady, where the rabbit just runs on energy and gets there. But in the end, the old-growth forest turned out to be a tortoise. It's those old conifers that hang around for a very long time. I'm going to take us next time into the understory where this all comes into play. So take a good look. But in the meantime, remember, if you can, go to Patreon, support us, sponsor us, give us a thumbs up, let us know how you feel. Till next time, take care.